The sun had already begun to dip below the horizon when the traveler arrived at the small beach house tucked between the dunes. It stood alone against the vast stretch of golden sand, its wooden frame weathered by years of salt and wind. The sea beyond glistened with a calm that felt almost deceptive, the gentle waves whispering against the shore. Inside, the air was cool and still, carrying a faint scent of the ocean mixed with something older, something damp and forgotten. It was the kind of quiet that demanded to be noticed, the kind that pressed against the ears until it became a sound of its own. For a moment, peace seemed possible. The waves rolled softly in the distance, and the cries of gulls faded into the dying light. The traveler unpacked slowly, admiring the view from the window, unaware that the night outside had begun to move in its own rhythm. The house felt alive, not with comfort, but with memory. Night arrived quickly, carried on the whisper of the sea breeze that crept through the half-open window. The traveler sat near the porch, watching the moon cast silver light across the sand. Everything seemed serene until something strange caught the eye. Footprints, faint and wet, leading up from the edge of the tide toward the steps of the house. They appeared fresh, as if someone had just walked out of the sea, but there was no one in sight. The traveler looked around, half expecting to see a late-night wanderer or a fisherman, but the beach stretched empty in both directions. A nervous laugh escaped, brushed off as a trick of light or imagination. Yet when dawn broke, the footprints remained, now dry, embedded into the sand as though frozen in time. That morning, the waves seemed to crash harder, as if angry that their secret had been noticed. The days passed quietly, but the silence never settled. Each evening, as the sun fell and the world turned to silver, the same pattern returned, footprints leading to the house, never away. The traveler grew uneasy, checking every door and window, making sure the house was locked tight. But locks meant little when the disturbance did not come from the world of the living. At night, soft whispers began to drift through the walls, like echoes carried by the wind. Sometimes they sounded like the sea itself speaking, other times like breath just behind the ear. The traveler began to sleep less, sitting awake in the living room with only a candle for company. The flame would flicker violently whenever the whispers grew louder, casting frantic shadows that danced along the walls like living things. One evening, as rain began to fall, the traveler noticed the floorboards near the back door were wet. The footprints had returned, but this time they were inside. Each print glistened under the dim light, stretching across the hallway and fading near the stairs. A deep chill filled the air, heavier than the storm outside. Heart-pounding, the traveler followed the marks, each step creaking louder than the last. The prints stopped abruptly in front of a small window facing the sea, as if whoever made them had simply vanished into thin air. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the glass, and for a brief second, a reflection stared back, one that didn't belong. The traveler stumbled back, but when the light faded, only their own trembling face remained. It was then that the realization sank in. The house was not empty, and it never had been. The next day, the wind carried a strange smell through the air, brine mixed with something faintly metallic. It lingered, stubborn and thick, as if the sea had brought something to shore that should have stayed buried. The traveler tried to distract themselves with mundane things, playing music, opening windows, pretending that life was ordinary. But each time silence returned, so did the sounds. At first it was soft, like the sigh of the tide. Then it grew sharper. Footsteps across the porch, slow and deliberate. The boards groaned under invisible weight, stopping directly outside the door. The handle rattled once, twice, and then stilled. The traveler held their breath, paralyzed by fear. Minutes stretched into hours before courage returned. And when the door was finally opened, nothing was there but the damp scent of the ocean and the faint outline of footprints fading into mist. By the fifth night, The sea began to roar louder, almost as if it wanted to drown something out. The traveler could no longer tell where the sound of waves ended and the whispering began. The house itself seemed to breathe with the tide, groaning in rhythm with the crashing surf. The windows rattled, and faint knocking echoed from within the walls. Sleep became impossible. Every time the traveler closed their eyes, they dreamt of the shore. Dark figures walking out of the water, their faces hidden, their footsteps leading up to the same door. In every dream, the sea grew closer, swallowing more of the land, until the beach house stood surrounded by endless water. Each morning, the traveler awoke drenched in sweat, uncertain whether the dreams were truly dreams at all. The seventh day brought a heavy fog that blanketed everything in sight. The sea was gone from view, swallowed by the mist, but its sound remained, louder than ever. Inside the house, the air felt thick, the walls damp with condensation. The traveler decided to leave, but something in the air resisted, an invisible weight pressing down, urging them to stay. As they packed their things, a faint tapping began on the window, slow and steady, like fingertips brushing the glass. When they turned, the shape of a handprint appeared, sliding down the window pane, leaving a trail of water behind. The travelers stumbled backward, knocking over the lamp, sending darkness sprawling across the room. When the light returned, the handprint was gone, but the sound of footsteps echoed once more, circling the house. Desperation set in as the fog refused to lift. The traveler lit every candle they could find, filling the rooms with trembling light. Shadows danced wildly, twisting and flickering, as though something unseen was moving among them. The air grew colder, breath visible in the dim glow. The whispers returned, now clearer, almost forming words, though none that could be understood. Then came the knock at the door, 3 slow, hollow thuds that made the candle flames quiver. The traveler didn't move. The knocking repeated, louder this time, accompanied by the unmistakable sound of water dripping onto the floor. When the door creaked open on its own, the fog outside spilled in, carrying with it the scent of salt and decay. The house groaned, the wind howled, and the door slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. Hours passed before silence returned, but it was a different kind of silence. Heavy, final, absolute. When morning came, the fog had lifted. The beach was calm again, the sea glistening under soft light, peaceful as if nothing had ever happened. The traveler was gone. Only a single set of footprints remained in the sand, leading from the house down toward the tide. They stopped where the waves began, and from there, nothing. Locals who passed by days later said the house looked different, quieter, almost watchful. They spoke of how the tide sounded strange near that part of the beach, as though whispering to itself. And on nights when the moon was high, some claimed to see a figure walking the shore, never turning back, always heading toward the house that waits, listening,